Welcome to No Buts About It. You're listening to Losers Advocate, the Las Vegas Raiders edition. Today we're going to talk about the points of hope for the Raiders. What do they have going for them this season going into it? And at the end, we're going to discuss whether or not we think they're going to over or underperform based on their Vegas odds this year. Let's jump into it.
Absolutely nothing. Those are the hope for the Raiders. Video over now. Stan, what do you got for us?
Raiders fans, I think you've been here as often as I have as a Jets fan, but we're once again looking at a season where it's not looking too great. What are the good things we could find with this team? What are the positives? And just maybe, could we have a winning record? Could we at least beat the Vegas odds and look a little better than we're expected to? Well, to start off, you have a new head coach, a new OC, a new DC for this team. First times for all three of those, and that's with Klint Kubiak as the head coach. Now, Klint Kubiak has been kind of wanted around the league for quite a few years here. Josh, I feel like you might speak a little more on Klint Kubiak.
Yeah, Klint Kubiak is someone who, like Stan said, get him out of here. Like Stan said, he's been a coaching prospect around the league for a while. He's always kind of just been looking for that perfect position, and he's spent a lot of time with a lot of teams. And also, he has the pedigree. So, his dad was Gary Kubiak with the Denver Broncos, and he's got that coaching experience. He can kind of lean on that. He's been around the NFL since he was a young kid, and he's seen all these different coaches. He's learned from his dad. He's learned from all of his dad's assistants. And then he's learned from guys like Mike McDonald last year with the Seattle Seahawks. They won the Super Bowl. So Klint Kubiak isn't, necessarily, your number one prospect is as a head coach. He's not I guess I would put it like, he's not a Sean McVay, I would say, where Sean McVay became a coach and he was the young prodigy who was going to come and save the Rams. And in a lot of ways he did, but Kubiak he did. Sean McVay lived up to every expectation that he had, but Klint Kubiak, he's someone that I think has a lot of expectations of him and is excited to take those on because he didn't need to leave Seattle. I'm sure Mike McDonald would have loved to run it back with him again, but he wants to be in Las Vegas. He's had these job opportunities before, and he was, if I'm remembering correctly, the final hiring or one of the final hirings in this coaching cycle. And he said, I'm going to be in Las Vegas. That is my goal. That is where I want to be. And I want to be with Fernando Mendoza, with Ashton Gianti, with all these players. And I think that's really important that he's excited to be there as the head coach.
Yeah, look at his coordinators. You also have first-time coordinators too with Andrew Giannacco. I don't know much about Giannacco going into this, but his last experience was with the Super Bowl winning Seahawks as a quarterback coach. So that's kind of another glimmer of why they may have brought him in. They knew they were bringing in Fernando Mendoza, right? The day the season ended, the day they knew they were going to have the first pick, everyone who was a Raiders fan, who worked at an organization, they knew they were bringing in Mendoza. So Giannacco seems like bringing in a quarterback coach off a team that won a Super Bowl. That makes sense when you're bringing in a rookie quarterback there. And then on defense, you have Rob Leonard, who's been around the league quite a bit as a positional coach. He's coming to be DC now, and he was most recently working with the Raiders on their as a positional coach for a couple of years with them. So overall, yeah, you got three first-year coaches at head coach, OC, and DC. Definitely a concern, but you could see why they were brought in. Mainly with the focus being around Mendoza. And talking about him, yeah, he's the other big positive for you. You got the number one pick. You got basically the only quarterback anyone really wanted in the draft, at the top of the draft at least, right? No one else would have been taken that high. But you got the guy. You got, the bell of the ball in Mendoza. And you also have Kirk Cousins as a quarterback who's going to, on paper, start ahead of him. I think that's what the plan is now. So Whether it's Kirk Cousins throughout most of the season, Mendoza steps in towards the end, or if Mendoza ends up stepping in pretty early this season, you have a better quarterback situation than you had last year with just Geno Smith, and you have better receivers than you had last year. And part of that is just because you had such little talent there last year. You just have to get better somehow. But yeah, you got some better names in there. Overall, though, I think the O-line is going to be the main thing to hope for in the Raiders. I don't think they added enough to the receiver room, to any other room on offense, really. But just having a healthy O-line for a young quarterback, or for Kirk Cousins, an old quarterback who's going to have trouble with mobility, having a healthy O-line can make all of the difference there. And with their O-line, Colton Miller, that's the big name everyone's talking about. And with health overall in the O-line, with Tyler Linderbaum being added to that O-line, that gives you a lot of hope. Tyler Linderbaum especially, he's a guy who's been able to lead an O-line before. Now you're bringing him into this very kind of tangled up room that just didn't have any consistency last year. Now you have Tyler Linderbaum, who's known for being able to be a leader in that room. That's a big difference maker for the Raiders.
Yeah, so the big thing, I think what's important is we can see the plan with the Raiders. The Raiders, what they're doing is logical. It's not, just trying to throw something together, all cattywampus. So you bring in Fernando Mendoza, who, he can get mobile, but that's not really his game, I would say. I think he's definitely more comfortable just being in the pocket. But, of course, he does have plays where he'll step up. He did it in the national championship for an awesome touchdown run. But I think – so then you see, okay, Klint Kubiak's bringing in his old quarterbacks coach when he was the offensive coordinator at Seattle. And we see Sam Darnold is another type of quarterback now who's not as mobile. Again, he'll step up when he needs to, but I think he's more comfortable in the pocket at this point. So we're working with the same type of quarterback. And then, okay, we've got, that knowledge. So what are we going to do to help out that young quarterback? Well, we're going to bring in a veteran so that our young quarterback doesn't have to start right away. Because Fernando Mendoza is, as much as I love him, he's not a Joe Burrow. He's not, a Cam Newton. He's not like your high number one prospect. If it was the 2020 draft, he probably wouldn't be the first overall pick. But this was a shallow draft class, and for quarterbacks, so he was the first overall pick. And I think bringing in these things, starting to connect these dots, adding Tyler Linderbaum, who the Baltimore Ravens are absolutely missing a ton right now, adds to your other first-round pick from last season with Ashton Gianti. We saw Ashton Gianti. He was a prodigy. Everyone thought he was going to come out, and he didn't really have the rookie year a lot of people expected of him. He struggled at times, and it was because of that O-line, but also it was because the passing game wasn't there. So I think by bringing in Fernando Mendoza, by hopefully elevating that passing game, or even with Kirk Cousins, you're going to automatically have a better game with Ashton Gianti as well. So that balance and this plan, I like what Klint Kubiak's doing. And he knows how to game plan around a star running back with a quarterback that may not be the best in the NFL, but if you game plan it right, he's going to look good, like Sam Darnold did last year. Sam Darnold was in MVP conversations all of a sudden in Seattle last year. And they had Kenneth Walker, who looked amazing. He won Super Bowl MVP last year. So if you can recreate that with Fernando Mendoza and Ashton Gianti, you're going to be in really, really good shape if you're the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, and to me, with all of the teams, we've talked about 4 teams. I know the viewers don't know this, but we talked about 3 other teams today. And out of all these teams, I do have to say, I think the Raiders are the ones I feel least inspired in. I don't know how you feel about comparatively to these other teams at the bottom, but in many ways, it feels like their biggest weaknesses with that O-line. Yeah, you brought in Tyler Linderbaum. I still don't know if this O-line is going to be good. I mean, what can you realistically expect out of this O-line this season?
So honestly, the O-line's not my major concern. So that's kind of hard for me to answer. Yeah, they're not maybe what they're not all the way there, but I do like moving Jackson Powers-Johnson over to guard. We talked about Colton Miller. We talked about Tyler Linderbaum. You have three out of your 5 guys right now we're talking about are pretty good players right there on that O-line. Where I'm concerned is the wide receivers, actually, because something that Fernando Mendoza, and he said this when he was at IU, is he needs really good players. And we have the wide receivers. I mean, Brock Bowers is obviously Brock Bowers, but I want to see one of these wide receivers step up. I want to see Trey Tucker step up, Jack Betch step up, Jalen Naylor, one of them step up as the wide receiver one. Who's going to take over? Because Brock Bowers, we cannot have the entire passing game reliant on our star tight end. I need to have, if he ends up being your wide receiver one, that's fine. But who is going to be there for when Brock Bowers misses a game, or when you need Brock Bowers to come in and block? Like, who's going to do that for us? That's my concern. I don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, they brought in Jalen Naylor. There's not really any other notable addition, right? Unless I'm misremembering.
Not that I can think of, because Jack Betch was a rookie last year. Trey Tucker's been with them for a bit. Looking at their depth chart, I don't see anyone that really, sticks out to me as the clear one. That position is wide open to me for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, no, there is. I think that will be a major issue with them. But I do think there is some hope with, if you're running a lot of 13 personnel. Michael Mayer as your tight end number 2, he could do a lot more than most tight end number 2s. He could do a lot more than a couple of tight end number 1s in the league. So that's a position where I think that tight end room. You mentioned Brock Bowers. We know what he could do, but maybe if you're running enough, big packages, getting some jumbo sets out there, and then if your wide receivers can do enough, you might have something there. But no, I do think the combination of not being able to improve that wide receiver room enough, and then not being able to have an O-line that can give the quarterback enough time to find some, third, fourth options on passing sets, that might be a deadly combination for them.
Yeah, and I don't know. We want Ashton Gianti to develop into it. So that's why I'm worried about the passing game, because if the passing game isn't good, Ashton Gianti's not going to do well either, because they're just going to crowd the line, whatever defense you're playing. So that's what I'm looking at. I think they added a ton on defense. I think they did really well in building up that defensive team. I know you didn't really talk about it yet, but they added Kwity Paye. They added Nakobe Dean, a huge addition. They added Quay Walker. They kind of, depending on how you want to look at it, added Max Crosby back. So, there's options there. Jeremy Chin is on that team. So this defense could be really good. And I'd hate to see this defense, be really good, and then the offense can't put up points.
Yeah, no, I kind of forgot to bring up the defense, but yeah, there's a lot of strength there. And it's funny you brought up the Crosby situation. I thought about bringing this up. I wonder how that plays out one more season, because I don't think the organization itself has made the positive changes Crosby wants. So I'm kind of wondering, what are the odds we see another issue come up week 10 of this year towards the end? Or maybe at the trade deadline. Maybe he's going to ruffle some feathers at the trade deadline. What do you know about the situation? What do you think it's going to look like?
So Max Crosby's in a bit of a predicament, I think, because he failed his physical, whatever, and ended back up with the Raiders. That trade didn't go through, and he came back and he said, "You know what? I'm done. Let's do it. Let's become Raiders again." But if we enter into that situation where, they come out the gate and they're not so hot, or they're struggling, or, like you said, maybe he starts ruffling things at the trade deadline, what does that say to teams that may be interested in him, right? There may be teams that look at that and go, yeah, okay, he's a great player, but, as soon as things get a little rough, he seems to turncoat, right? So maybe that would cause some teams to not be interested in him. Now, of course, there's going to be teams that are like, okay, we're one edge rusher away from the Super Bowl, so we're going to add him. But the value may not be there. Maybe they're like, okay, we're only going to offer a third-round pick instead of 2 firsts. and the Raiders don't accept that. Like I don't know. I like Max Crosby generally as a player. I just think he needs to kind of prove that he's there to stay now. And it's hard to see that until it actually happens, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think, for what it's worth, I tend to take his side on more of the issues he's had with the team. Because I don't think he's complained as much about the losing as the lack of agency on the part of the team. I think he wants to be there. And you see this all the time with guys who are on these losing teams. On the Jets, Garrett Wilson, even before he got traded away, Sauce, Quinnen were kind of like this, where or Quinnen less so, but Sauce was like this, where no matter how bad things are going for the team, they wanted to turn it around. They wanted to make things work. I think Crosby has been that sort of guy for the Raiders, where I think it was last year when he just saw a lack of agency and like the very obvious examples of tanking, where he just said, "Hey, I want to win football games. If I'm going to suit up for you, I want to win. I don't want to be held back for just to keep me safe." He wants to be out there, and I think that's something I applaud as a fan. Like, I want my team's players to want to be out there, even if it doesn't make sense. I want them to want to fight for every single down. So I think that is something where if that issue comes up again and he wants a way out of it, I think it will take away some of his value. But if he's fully causing an issue, I think it makes most sense for Kubiak and this new regime with the Raiders to just say, you know what? We don't need to deal with this. We have some young guys. We want to build a better culture. We have some great people in this organization. Let's just move on from him, even if it's not the best return.
Okay. Yeah. Well, like I said, we don't know what happens till it happens. But
let's jump into, unless you have anything else to add, let's jump into the win-loss total. So Vegas has them at 5.5. Right off the bat, I don't see that too much, but let's look into these teams. Week 1, they probably have a win because they're playing the Dolphins. Okay, that's about as easy as a Week 1 matchup you can get in the NFL. Yes, Josh?
We've just been kicking the Dolphins while they're down. We've recorded 4 of these today back to back, and every single time the Dolphins come, we're like, okay, the Dolphins suck. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, I mean, there will be a Dolphins video in this same series out in the not so far future. So, hold on to that. We'll get into a lot more of the specifics at that point. But yeah, I mean, this is also in Vegas, so it's an away game for the Dolphins. Dolphins don't do well in the desert. I've seen it. It's kind of ugly. I think the Raiders are going to start off pretty strong in Week 1. Then they have the Chargers, and that's going to be at LA. They have the Saints at New Orleans. Then they come back home for the Chiefs before heading out to see the Patriots, followed by the Bills, the Rams, and the Jets. So pretty mixed bag there overall, but a lot of really tough teams for sure. And again, a lot of that's going to come down to the division they're playing in. After the Jets, they see the 49ers, the Seahawks, the Broncos, the Browns, Chargers, Broncos again, and then they end off with an easier stretch of Titans, Cardinals, and Chiefs. So I'm looking at, 5.5 wins. I don't think they're going to be terribly off it, but I think they might settle out at 4 wins on the season, maybe even 3.
I've got them at 6.
At 6? Where do you see those?
I think they can beat the Dolphins, the Saints. I think they can split with the Chiefs.
I think so too. For that,
I was not high on the. I haven't been high on the Chiefs in a long time, and I know they went to the Super Bowl like 2 years ago, but I wasn't high on them that year, and they did not look good in the Super Bowl. And I'm really not high on them this year. I know it's Patrick Mahomes. You gotta, but anyway, Dolphins, Saints, Chiefs. That's 3. I think they can beat the Jets, so that's 4. Browns, and then Titans or Cardinals. So I've got a pillow. I think they'll win one of those games. And they could maybe split with the Chargers. Depending on how they do. I think I got a little bit of a pillow. So I think their ceiling is 8 games, but I think they can get 6. I'm going to go over.
Okay, and I'm taking the under. I don't see them winning at the Saints on the road. I think it was the Saints in Vegas. I would be a little more pro giving that to them, but on the road, I just don't see that happening. And I don't think they're going to beat the Chargers either at home or away. I think it's going to come down to a lot of trench battles for them, especially because whether you're talking about Mendoza or Kirk Cousins, both of those quarterbacks are not able to do much without a strong O line. There are no quarterback can like win a Super Bowl without a good enough O line. There's things like that, but when you're talking about just week in week out, you have two quarterbacks who aren't able to create without time in the pocket. And that to me, I think is going to be a big difference maker with a lot of those teams. Like even the Chiefs are going to put, I think, more pressure on their quarterback than they're going to be able to deal with. So I think ultimately they're not going to reach the 6 wins they would need to go over 5.5. I have them somewhere below it.
Yes, okay, the Chargers are the better team on paper, but they also have O-line questions. If there's an injury that pops up, we got both Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater coming off of injuries.
Yeah, but the type of quarterback Justin Herbert is, we've seen him as a quarterback who can do well even when his O-line isn't there. I mean, he's like single-handedly dragged them through a couple of seasons recently because of that. And I do think at the end of the day, their O-line is looking better on paper, so we'll see how that plays out week 1 of the season. But I think the Chargers, just that offense has way too many tools compared to a lot of nothing that's going to come out, in my opinion, from the Raiders. Now, one thing we talked about in a different video, when we were talking about the Cardinals, they could be a very, active team at the deadline, getting on the waiver market. I think the Raiders have, especially, they're going to be number 1 on those waiver picks. They could have a very different wide receiver room. They could add 2 or 3 bodies, I think, through the waiver wire. And there's a couple other rooms, especially on offense. Can you find a backup guard, a backup tackle to that O-line on the waiver wire when you're picking number 1? I think so. What do you think about that for them?
Yeah, I mean, so the Bengals are another team that's very active during, especially roster cutdowns on the waiver wire, and then just releases in general. So I think that the Raiders could be, one of those teams similar to the Bengals who are waiting to see, what wide receivers get let go. Who, maybe they're not the best, but maybe they're coming from a team like the Bengals who's really deep at wide receiver. And, on the Bengals, it's wide receiver 6, but maybe on my team, they're going to be wide receiver 3. The Jets, we talked about them. They kind of built up their roster that way. Isaiah Williams, we talked about him. On the Bengals, he was like wide receiver 8, and now he's second string on the Jets. So you can build off of these waiver wires, and it's not going to be a huge name, most likely, but you can get some good depth players, some guys who can maybe make some moves, or maybe they do become a starter and they shock the world with where they are, like A.D. Mitchell did with the Jets when he was traded by the Colts.
Yeah, no, I think this is another team that just they have a lot to gain at the from the waiver wire.
Yeah, I 100% agree, but I think they can get their 6 wins. I believe in them. I believe in Fernando Mendoza.
Cool.
So, is that all you had to say about the Las Vegas Raiders?
Yeah, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, Raiders fans, if you are mad at Stan, you can take it out on him in our fantasy league. This is a subscribers only fantasy league. First 12 people to email me at bullnewspodcast2@gmail.com proof that you are subscribed on any platform, whether it is YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever you listen to this show on. Send me the information. I'll send you the link. You can join. The winner will receive a one-of-a-kind hat. As you can see, I am a reigning fantasy football champion. I've got my trophy. So, join. Let's have some fun. Let's play some football, and it'll be a good time. Also, as always, please comment. Let us know down below. What do you think about the Las Vegas Raiders? What are you most excited about? Do you think they'll hit that over? Do you think they'll go under like Stan does? I think 6 wins is easy for them. Tell me if I'm crazy. Tell me if you think Stan's crazy. But thank you for watching, and until next time, go do something nice for someone.